Welcome back to McChats here on McGTV, youtube.com/MikeMcGTV. Follow me on Twitter at MikeMcGTV. And yep, it's another Twin Peaks episode, seeing as how the series Twin Peaks: The Return came to an end last week with the final 2 episodes airing. And who better to have on a Twin Peaks wrap-up episode than my good friend from the Three Geeks podcast, Mr. Jason Taylor. How you doing, Jason?
Good, man. Excited to get into it.
All right. Yes, let's indeed get into it. Just a heads up for any listeners, there's probably going to be spoilers laced throughout this entire discussion because we want to talk about the highlights, the low points, and all the general weirdness that Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks: The Return encapsulates. So you've been warned ahead of time, even if we say anything spoilerish, it probably won't make a lick of sense to anyone except die-hard David Lynch fans. So we've discussed in the past kind of our thoughts on the original show. And we talked a little bit about, what was the last episode we left off on? Was it 8 or was it a couple of episodes after 8?
I think it was either 11 or 12. I think it was right around there.
Okay, so 11 or 12. At that point, the show was doing fine, chugging along at its own pace, but I definitely felt a little bit of apprehension build up, knowing that there was only 6 episodes or so left. I'm like, where's this going? How quickly are they going to resolve some of these plots? And things kind of picked up fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was kind of your thoughts following, I guess it would be when the Mitchum brothers and Dougie partnered up a little bit?
I like that storyline, but I started to find myself getting a little... It's like David Lynch read my mind. It's almost as if I was getting tired of Dougie, and then right at that moment is when, he put the fork in the electrical socket.
Yeah.
So I did enjoy, what happened after that. But no, man, I really liked the show, and I felt more and more, especially post episode 10 or 11, it started to feel more and more like the original Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were spending more time in Twin Peaks, which I found we were doing that with every episode. Like every episode that progressed, we were always spending just a few more minutes in Twin Peaks, and then a few more minutes, and then a few more. So yeah, I really liked the back half of the season.
A lot of the characters you initially wanted to be there for got a lot more to do. Like, who would have thought Andy would have been one of the penultimate waiting room or red room avatars or whatever was going on there? He became pretty integral to a certain point in the plot. But
I did not see that coming. The scene with Lucy in the second to last episode was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Everyone got a moment to shine as the finale was coming to a close, which makes sense. It kind of rounded out a lot of characters pretty well.
Yeah, it did, absolutely. It's funny because episode 17, it wraps the show up very neatly, I thought, or at least, as neatly as you could expect from Twin Peaks. And I checked my DVR as I'm watching that 17th episode. I'm like, there's still an hour and 20 minutes left of this, and we're already seemingly wrapping this up nicely.
The thing is, I have my penultimate theory on everything, and then I'll do away with it. But the last 2 hours, especially of this series, I feel in the past week or so online have become some of the most polarizing opinions on a television show I've seen in a long while. Probably since Lost, honestly.
Absolutely, but it's one of the things with Twin Peaks that I don't know if a lot of fans realize now, and I'm sure they will in a few years. One of the things that's kept Twin Peaks fans being Twin Peaks fans is all the discussion and debate with the whole, how's Annie finale that we had before. People were able to speculate, and now, again, you're able to speculate and discuss and have a conversation because it wasn't tied into a bow. And whether we get another season of The Return or whether we don't, we, at least as fans, get to still have that. Because, when The Return comes back, you're kind of like, oh, is this going to be taken away from me? And in a lot of ways it wasn't, because now we have something new to discuss and debate for 25, 27 years.
Well, here's what I ask you. Do you want it to come back?
I would love it to come back if David Lynch wants it to come back. because I had enjoyed every bit of this season. Even some of the parts that I didn't like, I still found myself extremely captivated and emotionally invested. And this is one of the few shows that allowed you to feel every emotion, from frustration to happiness to sadness to laughter to what the fuck. Like, it's just all over the spectrum. And yes, I would want it to come back if David Lynch wants it to come back. If he doesn't want it to come back, and they try to do it with somebody else, or he comes back for lots of money, which doesn't seem like something David Lynch would do, I wouldn't want it to happen any other way other than him wanting to do it.
I'm of the opinion that, well, obviously it's his creative, outlet. So whether he decides to come back to it or not, I mean, I'd be more than happy to see just more Lynchian stuff on TV, but I think it should end. That finale kind of encapsulated everything perfectly with regards to not just Twin Peaks, but the way David Lynch addresses media and television in general. And I actually, a couple days ago, just finished up my Twin Peaks review for Neverending Radical Dude, which hopefully will be up soon and will probably be the least popular post in a while because it's not nearly as nerdy enough or, geek culture-y enough for Neverending Radical Dude, probably.
So what is your theory? You said you had a theory?
It's a theory that I'd seen posted a couple times, and I feel more reassured about it now. It's not necessarily anything like a lot of people swear up and down by a certain theory. It's just something I think, yeah, you know what? That works for me as summarizing the show in general. It's a theory that I saw in a couple of articles because immediately after, everyone's trying to theorize, like, okay, what is it? Is it spirit realm? Is it time travel? What is this? Is this just a near-death experience for somebody? And what I believe it is that it's all a dream. You'll know that there's references to dreams throughout the entire story, going back to the original series. Everyone seems just so oddly off. Like, you could believe people, there are people that exist like this, but they're just a shade off from normal. What one person stated actually was that this is all in Laura Palmer's head. Like, this whole story has been taking place in Laura Palmer's head because it always comes back to her. And even this show, even though she was missing for a large chunk of this series, she's constantly referenced. There's imagery of her all over the place. And then in the finale, and, the last portion of the 17th episode deals directly with her and Cooper. I just have this kind of feeling like, yeah, this is all just taking place in the mind of a troubled girl. And that all these characters don't actually exist. Like, that's definitely the vibe I got from the 17th episode when Cooper and Diane go hand in hand to that warehouse or whatever with Gordon and saying, like, I hope I see you all again. Maybe very
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, very Wizard of Oz like. Like, this is almost like David Lynch's Wizard of Oz in a way, and Laura Palmer is the Dorothy, even though she's not there for a majority of it.
Yes, I agree with you. I don't know if the whole thing was a dream. I can't wait to dive back into the show and watch it. But I know that at the very end, when you hear Sarah say Laura, and then she starts screaming, that's her waking up from a dream. Absolutely. Just how much of it was a dream, I don't know. But yeah, it definitely was. At least the whole return was definitely a dream sequence.
Yeah.
I kind of agree. Like, this was Cooper got Laura, like you said, a troubled person having a dream, and then at the very end of the return, you see her living somewhat of a normal life as somebody else, somewhere else, and then, her subconscious could be Coop, brings her back and reminds her, and then, she gets woken up and then she screams. So yeah, absolutely. I'm okay with this being the series finale. I think it wrapped up the show and the themes very, very well.
No, I definitely agree with you on the Cooper thing. Like, Cooper is a kind of avatar she fashioned for herself. Like, this all-around optimistic good guy she could rely on, for the sake of solving her murder, but also, like, for the sake of guiding her home in the case of this series in particular. And when the avatar gets caught up in the world as much as she is, like what happens. I don't feel like literally that could be it, but thematically that just works for me really well. And yeah,
it works as a dream for Cooper as well. Like, if you thought about it as Cooper's dream, it works too. Because when Cooper goes to find Laura in the 18th episode, there's elements of Mr. C, and there's elements of Dougie, and there's elements of the original Cooper in Kyle MacLachlan's performance in the last 15, 20 minutes that, each part of them could have been part of the subconscious that was just Dale Cooper.
Mm-hmm. It also makes sense, too, why it seemed the 17th episode with the showdown between him and Mr. C was so kind of abrupt, honestly, because you thought that was where the whole series was going, was this final confrontation between good Cooper and bad Cooper. But honestly, that was kind of curtain dressings compared to what's lying underneath, which is, how do we bring this full circle with Laura?
Yeah, I know Mark Frost has the final dossier, which comes out this month or next month in book form. I'm looking forward to reading that.
How often have they been releasing those before?
This is it. Like, they released the Secret History of Twin Peaks 6 months prior to the new series, and then now the final dossier is coming out, which I'm curious to see how that works out. I'm just now about to dive into the Secret History of Twin Peaks. I didn't want to just listen to it, and I didn't want to just read it. So I'm going to listen to it while I read it and just get the whole experience of enjoying the book. Because I really, really like this world.
Yeah. I mean, and ultimately, that's what I feel the show was about. Because I mentioned this in my review, and I mentioned this in previous podcasts too, is that Twin Peaks is about the little moments for me. It's not about the mystery. While the mystery is intriguing at times, and it's fun, like you said, to theorize and come up with some solutions for yourself, that's not what the show's strength is. The strength lies in those little character moments, in those little interactions, in taking ridiculous characters and making you like them and love them even. Like in the 18th episode, when Janie E and Sonny Jim get their Dougie avatar back. Like I
know that made me so happy.
And it wasn't like asshole Dougie from the first or from the second episode who was banging a hooker. It was like legit. It was like basically Cooper back as Dougie, and it was such a great emotional payoff because I actually liked that family. I liked him as Dougie, even though it played out probably a little longer than I would have liked. He was still very likable. And when he became Cooper again, the fact that he didn't completely blow them off made me happy. That kind of character arc for that family and for that iteration of Cooper was really emotionally satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the scene in the casino where he says goodbye to them. He's like, "This will not be the last time you see me."
Yeah.
And the whole emotional farewell was done really well.
Even though we hadn't seen her throughout a lot of the show, like just listening to Laura in the last episode, just kind of talking in esoteric terms and being very kind of detached and distant, it invested me in the last 15 minutes, definitely, because I was like, oh man, stuff's starting to come back to her a little bit. Little by little, she's turning into that character of old that we grew to kind of appreciate.
Yeah, man. One of the things to back up the dream theory is when Coop walks into her house and there's that guy just laying in the chair dead, and there's no mention of it. It doesn't even like it's not there, but it is there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just a completely like throwaway image, but if you look at it in that context now, it's kind of Coop and Laura a little bit kind of realizing like it's inconsequential.
And that could almost be, again, in the return of all of the weird stuff and all like the bad stuff that was happening in Twin Peaks, like kid getting sick in the car and some of the other things that happened could be the dream coming undone.
Stuff's unraveling, as it were. And I was wondering too, because it did seem like there was going to be a lot of things to resolve if he had gone the route of let's resolve all the subplots, because you've got whatever the hell's going on with Sarah. If you were to think of the show in the actual universe context of what the hell's possessed Sarah Palmer, will Bobby and what's her name, ever reconcile, what became of their daughter and things like that. If you were to take this show just at face value as a viewer, you'd be frustrated because there's so much that's not paid off in the scheme of like your typical subplots in a serialized TV show. Yeah. Whereas if you look at it more from the context of none of that matters, it's all about you caring about these little moments, then yeah, it's perfect. Like, I knew what the deal was with that Asian lady with no eyes before the 17th episode came in. I was like, oh, that's Diane. And I was glad that had payoff, but ultimately, come episode 18, that doesn't matter because she leaves.
Yeah, and he becomes Richard.
I gotta say, this is a fun Lynchian podcast because you sounding like a robot adds another level of off-kilterness to it. I mean, we can still understand you. You're coming through great. It just sounds really like you're in the Red Room.
That's awesome. So, yeah, like we were just saying about how all the side plots kind of don't matter. That's kind of true because the only plot that matters is Cooper and Laura's. And that's pretty much the storylines you do get resolution to.
I feel, again, that is like David Lynch's meta commentary coming through, not just on TV these days, but on his statement on the show in general. Because originally, I think you even mentioned it, is that they had no intention of solving the murder. Like, that wasn't even factor one for them. They were like, that's the backdrop, and let's explore this world with all these quirky characters. But then when the network was like, no, we gotta get back on track and solve the murder, that's when it got less interesting. And so what David Lynch did with this series was he set up very interesting scenarios through visuals and storytelling, but I had a feeling he wasn't going to explain anything because that's when it gets lame. You don't want to overcomplicate or simplify a story like this.
And I mean, that's real life. If you go to a restaurant, you overhear some people having a conversation and then they leave, you never get resolution to that conversation because it's about you. It's about what your journey is. And in this case, it's Laura and Dale's journey, and everything else is just side.
Yeah.
Just them coming in and out of it. And one of the things I really liked about episode 17, and maybe 18 a little bit, I think it was mainly in 17, was the usage of the Fire Walk With Me footage. It almost looked like you could make an argument, and I know it's not the case, but you could make an argument that David Lynch knew he was going to do this 25 years ago, because that's just how good that footage was incorporated.
Part of me has a feeling the root of the idea was there, because they've been working on this continuation for several years before actually filming it, before actually writing out the episodes. Him and Frost were touching base about what do we want to do with this in the future. So I have a feeling the root was planted in Fire Walk With Me there. And yeah, it makes perfect sense. Because honestly, Cheryl Lee, when she and Cooper meet up in the woods at the end of 17, I know she's way older now, but you couldn't tell based off of the way they integrate the old footage into the new.
No, man, and when they have, I can't think of his name, but the fish in the percolator guy going out to his morning fish, and, Laura's body's not there. It's all footage we've never seen before, but it's of that day, that moment, and it's awesome. It's like, I wouldn't put it past David Lynch to say, let's do one more take, but pretend she's not dead.
Yeah.
And just having that set aside for just in case.
Like day one, they knew that was kind of going to be the premise.
Yeah, it's hard to explain that footage any other way, but it's just, like I said, I really like this. And I've said it from the beginning. We had our last conversation. I said that I had a feeling that, they planned all the 25 years later stuff because they had an intention of it paying off, whether they were going to pay it off in a season 3 or season 4, or, by happenstance they got canceled and had to wait 25 years, but done. Bravo all around.
Well, now I ask you, was there anything you still have some frustration over not being resolved?
No. I mean, I did a little bit before we started talking about it. Now that I'm looking at it from a certain angle, not really. I mean, I don't need to know if Bobby and why can't I think of her name?
I can't think of it. Shelley. Sorry.
Yes. I don't care if Bobby and Shelley got together or not. We know they got together at one point, and she ended up with a guy that looks like Bobby, but no, not really. I mean, I wish I'd gotten to see a little bit more of some of the stuff that happened in episode 8. They had a little bit more.
I don't know how much smoke and mirrors that is, because ultimately everything abstract and surreal and weird from that realm, when you get right down to it, really wasn't too impactful on the last moments of the show. That's the thing, is like, that's what I remember from Peaks, and that's what I was like focused on throughout not just Firewalk with Me, but this whole revival, was how does this supernatural stuff play into it now that he's gone full-blown weird. But at the end of it, at the end of the journey, I'm kind of like, it doesn't matter. It's there because you get invested in it. But ultimately, that's its purpose. And again, it's his meta commentary. It's like, I'm here to give you more of an experience than an A, B, C story arc.
And an experience we had. That's for sure. Nick's theories, that Coop ended up in another dimension and all this other stuff. But I really like this conversation we just had. Like, I think I'm completely on board for the
dreamer.
The dream theory. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I feel that plays into a lot of Lynch's stuff, though. Mulholland Drive, Eraserhead, Wild at Heart, all of his stuff, which, if you look at it initially, and I've had this reaction too, when you look at these films initially, they're disjointed. They can seem very muddled and weird, but if you look at through the kind of the filter of someone who's kind of going through just a dreamlike experience, it kind of makes sense, because your dreams aren't perfectly structured. Even if you can kind of follow a narrative through your dreams and can recall a narrative, it's not going to be as crisp as a lot of television or books that you read. It's going to have a lot of weird moments or out of place moments or disjointed, perspective.
Yeah, it's like explaining a dream. So yeah, we were hanging out and we were at a movie theater, but it wasn't a movie theater. It was your bedroom. And then there was the bathroom was right there. For some reason you were eating pizza while we were taking a shower. Like, that's trying to explain your dream. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what's happening in the dream.
And it kind of explains again why a lot of his characters, not just in Twin Peaks, but in stuff like Lost Highway with Robert Blake, why a lot of that stuff is just so eccentric and unsettling. Like, have you seen Lost Highway yet?
I have not, but I've been told to watch it, and then I was told to watch it a second time because the people that recommended it did not like it the first time. They liked it the second, third, fourth time that they watched it. So
that's what I mean, is that upon initial viewing, you're like, what the fuck is this about? But then second or third time through, you pick up on things that you didn't pick up on before. And that whole thread in that film with Bill Pullman and I can't remember the other guy's name. I think it's Balthazar Getty and Robert Blake as this pale man who's always intersecting in his life, starts to kind of make a little bit of sense if you look at it from that surreal, like, no, this isn't actually happening. This is like someone's fever dream or something. Or someone's psyche is just crumbling. If you don't take it so literally and like look more just for the thematic stuff. And that's the thing. That's what a lot of people either will be on board for with Lynch or are like, nah, man, you're talking about bullshit. Which, from a casual viewer perspective, I could see some people being a little perturbed about the way the resolution came about. But not me. I was okay with it.
I'm new to David Lynch, so I'm really getting into it. I've been trying to getting away more from the superhero stuff and getting into more of like film world. And I was told that everybody that watched the old Twin Peaks that went into the new Twin Peaks went into it expecting to get that, David Lynch, but watered down by the studio and the networks and all of that stuff that wouldn't let him do everything he wanted to do. And this, we got David Lynch's Twin Peaks. This is how David Lynch wanted Twin Peaks to be. And that's what we got. And I'm telling you, man, if this 18 episodes means that I'm a David Lynch fan, then I cannot wait to dive into the rest of his universe.
Definitely. What you mentioned there, I feel rings very true, is that this might have been his whole intent from day one of Peaks, the original. But ABC probably coaxed him and Frost, or the reason there was a partnership with Frost probably was that, okay, he's here to balance you out a little bit. he's here to make sure you don't lose our major viewing demographic with your surrealism. Which, I mean, I like the original show for what it is, but you can tell at points that it's David Lynch trying his best to get his very unique style and themes across for primetime television.
And you can absolutely tell when David Lynch left the show. Mm-hmm. I guess somebody who didn't watch, like I said, again, I didn't know who David Lynch was when I was watching Twin Peaks initially, but the episodes of season 2 that I thought weren't as strong, I looked it up later and I realized that was the arc that he was gone, and it's definitely noticeable.
Again, I feel like this is kind of his meta commentary on it, saying, well, this is me, unfiltered, off the chain, as it were. I don't have any handlers. I get to call this show how I want, and this is what you're getting. You're either with me, or hopefully you'll pick it up in a second or third viewing.
And after watching The Return, it kind of makes sense that he didn't want to solve Laura Palmer's murder, because in the end, it didn't mean anything. It didn't matter who killed her.
Yeah, that's the thing. If we're going by the Dreamer's logic, there was no murder.
Exactly.
Like this could very well just be how a young woman copes with the horrible shit. Now, to tie it into a little bit of what goes on in the show, to give some of the stuff that happened in the show legitimacy, you could argue that her mother in this series is being portrayed as kind of unhinged and demonic. Her dad in the previous, iterations of the show was possessed by an evil spirit and did horrible things to her. That could very much represent her subconscious coping with the fact that maybe her dad really was an abusive prick and her mom was a neglectful woman and things like that. That's why when she hears her mother at the very end, it's frightening because reality's starting to set in again.
Yep, she's about to wake up.
When you think about it like that, and when you think about Cooper, especially in the form of he's a likable, altruistic, good guy. But even he's a little off kilter. He's a shade off from normal, which is the way a lot of people in our dreams, when we dream them, at least when I dream them, they're not exactly who, if I were to dream about you wouldn't exactly be acting the way you do in real life when we interact. You might be close, but there's a shade of strangeness to it.
Like talking robotic.
Yeah, a little bit. You'd be talking like this.
Well, I gotta say, man, you convinced me. I don't want another season of Twin Peaks. Now, I can't say that if it comes back, I will watch it, absolutely, because I'm a completionist, but I'm now on board. I want this just to be the end, because I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If he does decide to return to Twin Peaks, it just needs to be more the same. But I feel that's not going to be a problem for him because he honestly never promised answers for anybody going into it. He never flat out said all will be revealed.
No,
He's not like the writers of Lost, in other words, where they were saying, oh, this is all leading up to something meaningful. He's not about that. He's not about hyping up his stuff to be some kind of grand revelation or illusion. He's I'm giving you everything that I want to say and tell on the screen, and you either get it or you will get it. In a way, I feel he gives the viewer more credit than a lot of mainstream shows do. It's weird, but I think he understands people will come back and revisit the work and do what we're doing and discuss it and discuss its merits.
Man, I am looking forward to watching all 18 hours again.
Here's the thing. Would you ever marathon season 1, season 2, and The Return?
I have a friend that I'm getting into Twin Peaks right now, so I am rewatching season 1 right now.
It'd be
We're
interesting.
about to hit the finale.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of see what underlying elements run very consistently throughout all 3 seasons. And if there is any hint or indication that he's about to do what he does in the very last episode.
Yeah.
Even though we kind of gave away the ending, it's still worth the trip. It's still worth the experience to watch this series.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you, like I said, even though you know the way it ends, though what we told you doesn't mean it's the only right answer, because there's probably 375,000 theories on the internet right now of people who have just as much passion behind what they think happened. So,
and David Lynch probably won't tell you anytime soon what the correct answer is, nor should he, because he respects you a little bit more than that, to just flat out give you the answer.
Yeah, I heard he refuses to do commentaries. He refuses to do tracks. So all of his movies you have to watch straight through. You can't skip.
That makes sense. I mean, I've never actually listened to a David Lynch commentary. That makes sense now.
I just hope he doesn't do the Twin Peaks: The Return as an 18-hour thing that I have to sit through.
It plays well. It is very cinematic, so.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, it does say motion picture. And another thing that I find fascinating, especially after our conversation, is Cheryl Lee and Kyle MacLachlan were the only 2 cast members credited throughout the whole series.
Yeah, because she shows up in archive footage galore throughout that. Yeah. And even when present-day Kyle MacLachlan isn't being featured, you see, like, archive footage of him.
Yeah, and even if there's an episode that she's not in, she still was in the scrolling credits as Laura Palmer.
Check it out, folks. I'm very happy with what we got. At first, you do have that visceral reaction, because I did tweet out, no spoilers, just one word, what? Like, that was my one tweet on it, but it was a happy, what? Like, at first I was like, I couldn't believe it was the end, so I was abruptly, for a millisecond, frustrated, but then I'm like, whoa! Like, I literally did that in my apartment when the end hit.
I texted you. I was like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah. It was joyful, though. Like, I wasn't angry at all. I was very much like, oh, Lynch, you clever bastard. Because that's what I feel. It's like he kind of trolled everybody who was expecting straightforward storytelling. It's like, nah.
He could have ended it after the showdown between Coop and Mr. C. Like, it could have ended there.
Yeah, if it was your standard TV show, that's your big finale. But no, not with Twin Peaks. Even as the last 15 minutes started to creep in and they're still on the road, I had that feeling building up in me. I'm like, oh, he's going to do something weird here. We've only got 15 minutes left and they haven't even gotten to the town. This is building up for something that's either going to intrigue or disappoint Jason. That was my thought. I'm like, this is gonna pique his curiosity, or he's gonna be pissed.
Maybe we do another show where we theorize what could happen if they brought it back, because they did leave some, nuggets that they could feed on if they did continue.
Yeah.
What year is this? Is the most popular thing on my Twin Peaks message boards.
Yeah. The story goes on. Yeah. Very much in the way the story continued for all the characters, just not on screen.
Yeah.
So who knows? One thing I want to kind of wrap up with here is I'm very curious about this. I may never actually ask him, but do you think Max would ever get into a show like this?
No, because I think season 2 would lose him, to be honest with you. I think he'd get frustrated.
You think he'd be on board for the first?
I think he would like it.
But you think he'd be on board for the first season?
Maybe. But it does have some creepy moments, and Max really doesn't like that.
I mean, creepy. I mean, it's not like jump scare creepy stuff. I mean, some of it is, but it's like old school jump scare where all it is Frank Silva's face. And that's creepy enough, granted. But like, I never expected to be jump scared in Twin Peaks, and I never was. But it's that atmosphere and that build up to the horrific stuff that gets you. It's unsettling. Like, it's not like modern day horror where every 5 seconds a loud noise startles you. That's very different from being legitimately scared.
Yeah.
So
no, I think maybe I have a tough time deciding what he's going to like or not going to like. It's so random, it seems.
That was another thing that came into my mind as the 15 minutes were drawing to a close. I'm like, if Max was ever a fan of this show, I wonder if this would piss him off.
Maybe not.
But I liked it personally. It was fun. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the ride.
enjoy the full show, people. Starting with the first season, power on through a portion of the second season, and then enjoy all of the return. I don't really have much. When it was going on, I definitely would have said, like, oh, they're really drawing out the Dougie stuff. But in the end, the fact that I had such a strong response to the conclusion of that story arc means it was worth it. So there are times where you feel like your patience might be tested with certain characters or stories, but it all kind of pays off really well.
Yeah, I did have a tear in my eye when I saw Dougie with his family again.
It was legitimately heartwarming. And that's the thing. Again, Lynch takes you on a weird journey with weird characters, but the characters are so endearing that you love whatever closure you can get with them.
Yep.
So, all right. One last thing I have to ask for you, Jason, here is to take us out on a little Twin Peaks weirdness. But before that, you've been listening to McChats here on McGTV, youtube.com/MikeMcGTV. Follow me on Twitter at MikeMcGTV, and follow Jason and the rest of the Three Geeks over at youtube.com/Three Geeks Network, on Twitter at Three Geeks Podcast. All right, Jason, I'm going to take advantage of you having a robot voice. I need you to say something very Red Roomish for me to take us out. Something weird and off kilter. Like you're Mike, or you're the man from another place, or you're Bob. Give it your best.
The sun sets in the north, but in the south as well.
Dude.
Does that work?
Yes. With the filtered robot voice, it works really well. Thank you so much, sir. Have a good night. Good night, everybody.
Too, man. Thank you.